Hello, Music Multiverse listeners, and welcome to Beyond Your Radio, and welcome to Panelists Favorite Show. This one is a bit different, and tonight we're going to talk about bands and artists that we didn't particularly understand. Maybe it was the sound, the style, the vocalist, their subject matter, the genre itself didn't speak to us. Maybe even a certain flute pissed us off. Maybe a wild keyboardist. But then something happened. We don't know what. An experience, an album, a song, an epiphany. Who knows? But it wasn't until that moment, and that's the moment that our panelists are going to share with us tonight. I think this is pretty cool. So I'm hopeful. Regarding channel business, we know a few of you have left the party. I don't blame you. I haven't been able to deliver shows as promised, or maybe there's just it hasn't been really good or engaging to you. But I'm going to keep trying. Sometimes it's impossible to get some things done. We all have jobs and schedules and, but we'll see where we go from here. No matter what, know that I am always sincere about what I produce, my music love, the exploration I do. I don't make this channel to catch a genre that's hot. I don't link up to try to gain followers. Shit, I did a video with Taylor Swift's new album, being honest about it completely and utterly, and I didn't get 5 million hits on that, or I didn't even get 50. All right, so what does that tell you? It tells you exactly what you need to know. I do what I do to engage the music. I go where the music takes me and where it takes us. Right now, it's us feeding the channel, but I'd certainly like to hear what you people say. So for those of you that get it, thank you. For those of you hanging on with hopes, well, tell me what your hopes are, damn it. Don't hit the like and the dislike. That doesn't tell me anything. I do a Van Halen video, you put dislike. I don't know what that means. You don't like Van Halen or you don't like me? I need to, put in the comments. Your video is grainy. I can't, you talk too much, like my daughter says. Anyway, I got,
on DMC.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the interesting discussion for panelists' favorites. On the panel tonight, he didn't like onions until he found them in my cheese dip. That would be Jeff Young. See what I'm talking about? Until, right? His mom thought I was a complete asshole until she met me. Alice Kaluzny. And
actually,
apparently
no,
she still thinks I'm an
does.
asshole.
Yeah.
She still thinks I'm an asshole, but she loves me anyway. I'll start with Mr. Kaluzny.
So it's not that I never disliked this band. It's just that they were ordinary. They were there. It was in the upbringing of my musical taste. They fit in. Maybe they're on the radio here or there. It didn't do anything for me. Until the moment.
You get it.
The music videos appeared. And the discovery of YouTube, the infinite wonder of watching just stupid, dumb shit.
Maybe that's our problem. I need stupid, dumb shit.
Given to me by my father, R.I.P. That he would make me watch the most random shit. Linkin Park's In the End music video. My dad's showing me Eminem's Without Me video. But there was this band that consistently put out quirky, creative, fun music videos that told a story and you forgot you were listening to their music, and it made me like their music even more without the video. The Gorillaz.
Okay.
It's the cartooniness, the goofiness, especially if you watch, I forget how you want to say it, but 19-2000.
Okay.
That song.
All right.
You name any.
You're going ahead of Clint Eastwood, right?
Clint Eastwood's in there though. Rock the House is in. Like, you get this variety of songs that their music videos were this story within a story, and
yeah.
I'm forgetting what song I want to go with right now when I say it, but hearing the lyrics to it, when he says one lyric where he said he's under E's snare, I didn't realize E was the cartoon drummer. And it never clicked to me until I was older that I went, wait a minute. In the video, I remember now, he was literally under E's snare. And it clicked to me 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road. And I learned to really appreciate the artistry the Gorillaz put into it, because that also made me think their songs were somewhat designed for the cartoon showing, which, if you think about the band itself, really is the case. They were a bunch of cartoon characters with real musicianship behind it, but it's not like you were going to see a Gorillaz performance until you get to the modern day where tech has become a little bit better to be able to do something as such. So they were probably a band you thought I was ahead of what I was watching of their catalog. They were a band that was probably maybe a decade ahead of its time with the stuff that they were putting out. And then obviously it took me that long to figure out that they had a tie to Blur. So that tells you something right there, that I couldn't even put that together, that they were on their own so much separate entity. It took me a while to figure that out. So yeah, Gorilla's my number one right there for the music video was what made me love that band. That went from average and ordinary and just there to holy shit, this is good.
Yeah, good, great band. I like. They're always doing something different.
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't connect with me, and I lose track of the albums. But there's a couple I always go back to. That being one of them. That's
and you got to try. If you're not missing in some area, you're not trying to evolve that artistry. And honestly, like I said, they were a decade ahead of the time. They got to do something to adapt to still somehow be somewhat ahead now. And they got to swing and miss a couple times to eventually connect on a ball and hit that home run. So
yeah. I spoke about Blur the other day when I was doing Whale, who toured with them and did not survive the 90s, where Blur survived the 90s, right? And from out of the 80s. And because you evolve, you know, the evolution's necessary. Jeff, what you got for your first one of the evening?
Let's see here. I guess my most obvious one would be, I didn't really follow Metallica till Injustice for All came out. Like, I kind of knew them. My brother listened to them a little more than I did, but I didn't really know them, you know. But then it's like the album came out, the cover looked really cool, the band was already seemed cool. A couple people were talking about it at school. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go get the album. Go to Cabbages at the Lockport Mall, get it, go home, listen to my radio, put the headphones on, listen to it. I was just like blown away from the first song to listen to the whole thing. I was like, I have not heard something like this before. Like the precision of the music I was listening to with all the power and lyrics actually kind of meant something. And it just blew me away. And so ever since then, I've always been a fan of Metallica. And I was like, immediately went back to the store. Like, I got to buy all the other albums that I've been missing out on. Late to the party. Sorry. You know? And then, you know, within the same, that was like in 88, same year, they came to the Memorial Auditorium with Queensryche opening up for them and went to the show with a bunch of friends. Probably one of the first shows I went to. Because I didn't really go to a concert till like 86. But yeah, just awesome. And I mean, to this day, like, I just think I see a lot of people doing reactions to Metallica, and it's like they'll always pick, instead of just the song, they'll pick like the video to one. And I think it's the worst video in the history of the world because it just totally takes away from the actual song. There's so much of the movie from Johnny Get Your Gun in the actual video. There's almost more movie than there is actually the music itself. It's ridiculous. But everyone just thinks it's great. I think it sucks. But it's just annoying. Like, you watch it once, and you're like, I want to hear it.
Yeah, Metallica was on my list when I started this.
Even that year, they when they were nominated for the Grammys, they played at the Grammys, and I was like,
I remember that
happy to see them like kind of like in the mainstream, so to speak, because at that time they weren't played on the radio. Rolling Stone had them on the cover talking about how they're a top 10 band that doesn't get any radio airplay. You know, that changed a couple years later with everybody basically. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, what else can you say about Metallica now? But it's just like,
But I think it's funny you say that, because I look at the age discrepancy between me and obviously you two who grew up together and kind of saw the era of them coming in, whereas I couldn't or didn't and couldn't really register music in my head until 3 years old in 1996 or 97. By the
I
time
don't
they're
even think I
already
knew about
established.
88. I probably didn't know you till like, oh yeah, I did. I knew you like since 86. I think I knew you like high school because you went to DeSales. But anyway, go.
But what I'm getting at is Metallica wasn't a thing in my head until 96, 97 at earliest. And by then they're already established and off and running. So it's funny too, even looking at the age comparison to that, because I could never put Metallica on that list. Really, it was either I listen to them and I like them, or I don't, or I didn't like them at first and would take seeing them live. Like it would have to be something like that. But I think to see them in the early set, like you guys got to, I definitely appreciate that perspective too.
Well, this speaks to the entire idea of the music experience. To believe that everything starts with yourself and your timeline is complete absurdity. You know what I mean?
I think it makes
to me,
somewhat of a factor.
right? Like in mine, there's a couple that are beyond my years, right? And a couple in the new. It's when do you get it? And it doesn't happen right away, especially going back to the past. And like one of these that I'm going to talk about, as a matter of fact, I'll just do it right now because it's a good example, right? So my number 5 is Rush. Not my number 1. Some people might be surprised at that, but as I got through this exercise, I started to realize where I was headed with this. I never really gave Rush much playing time. At that time, I was playing in the radio world where prog was probably pushed more by Genesis and Phil Collins than Rush for me. So, I mean, that's not like Rush was getting played on the radio that often. Their songs were too long. You know, no one's going to play a 9-minute this or a 9-minute that. Although you already heard my appreciation for Genesis and Peter Gabriel before, it was Geddy Lee's voice that sort of deterred me. But the fact of the matter is, Rush at that time in the early years, I wasn't listening to him. I wasn't old enough to appreciate prog.
Well, even then, they didn't even get any critical acclaim. There was nobody that you were going to read that said they were great, that you should give a chance.
Correct. And listen, I'm still not in the Pocket Protectors Club. All right. These guys kind of nerdy smart, right? And the range of the musicianship and all that I didn't understand. And now here's where the weird part comes in, right? This speaks to Alex's position. I came in, I knew the other albums, so to speak, before this one, because I saw them in my wife's collection, cassettes, you know. But I take her to Roll the Bone. So Roll the Bones is what?
I was there with you.
Yeah, you were there. And it's Roll the Bones. It's probably the second most hated album in their history, maybe, because he's rapping on it, right? And they right? Okay, I get it. It's not my favorite album, but it does have a lot of great stuff on it, and they're great musicians. And that show was the catalyst for me going back and grabbing my wife's cassette and putting it in the car and go, Presto. All right, I think Presto was the one before it. I could be wrong. And then going back further and further and further. Oh my gosh, and Signals and all these and Grace Under Pressure, all kinds of different stuff going on. And they moved with the era and they changed to keyboard versus guitar and they played all that stuff. So it is a record that is not loved by the Rush community, I'm pretty sure. But it's the catalyst that to put me in the wheelhouse of them and become a fan and have, every single album. Oh, wait, yeah. Just, and to have seen them 3 other times live. Rush was my number 5. Back to Alex.
Well, you reminded me that I'm disappointed that I got my mom Geddy Lee's book at Christmas and she still hasn't even read it. I'm going to go with the one that we'll just keep continuing along the lines of the topic. You reminded me that, with the age gap, it took me to have to go maybe see somebody to understand whether or not I liked them. And I had heard enough people, and I have 2 bands in this category that I'd heard them so talked about, maybe heard a song or two, and that doesn't tell me much. And it took going to see them live for me to go, holy shit, I need to go backward. And the two that fit under that category for me were Manchester Orchestra.
I've not seen them live.
I went on knowing, I don't even know if I had a second song in the arsenal, but at least one. And I think there was a second. And then that was right as Million Masks of God came out. And you highly liked that album.
Great album.
And I said, fuck it. I have to go. That's going to be a show I'm not going to miss, especially for the price it was. I'm like, this is a no-brainer to go check them out and go hang at a concert for a night.
Yeah.
And ended up being a great show and became one that I ended up growing to like them from. And they didn't play the stuff I knew beforehand. It was all the modern stuff. The second one that fits in this category, and it led me down a rabbit hole because of it, because of the nature of the concert, was the secret show I did where you had to figure out the clues and they're only letting the first few so many in that got in the line, was Andrew McMahon at Terrace Park here in Buffalo, New York, at Hoyt Lake. And found it out, ran into my buddy TJ, who I had only known from playing fantasy hockey against at the show. And I knew his face from draft night in a setting like this. And we ended up bonding over it and we've seen each other a couple times since. But he was during the show telling me which songs were his new stuff as Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, which songs were his Jack's Mannequin things that my cousin was on the tour with Andrew McMahon for, and I still never appreciated it as much as I did hearing it finally live. And then even him diving back into his Something Corporate days. And so that in-person experience led me to go right back through all of Andrew McMahon's eras, which are, I would still say, better than Taylor Swift's. And that has put him into this category for me. So Andrew McMahon and Manchester Orchestra, because I saw them live and I finally got it.
Yeah. Andrew McMahon's an interesting one too. So yeah, good. Those are excellent picks. Jeff Young, what is your next?
And I will say before Jeff starts, I really tried to pick stuff I haven't talked about on this show. So,
right.
To Jeff,
I'm going with Black Sabbath, because as big of a fan I am now of them, like when Ozzy Osbourne started his solo career, that's when I first really learned of Ozzy. And his first album was like 1980. So I was like 9 years old. So I didn't live through the first probably half of the albums of Black Sabbath, right? And so, I liked the album immediately. It was getting some airplay, obviously. And, me and my friends liked it. And then I learned, wait, someone told me Ozzy came from Black Sabbath. I'm like, wait, but I look back, like, okay, there's 8 albums that he did already that I never heard of. Like, let's go look at this stuff. And I mean, in some sense, it was just different, but also better than what he was doing now. But I still liked them both. But it's just like, man, like pretty amazing that Ozzy could go from such a great band like Sabbath to finding another great guitarist like Randy Rhoads, or even having, good music. And but yeah, just learning about Ozzy for the first time led me to, oh my God, I didn't even know Black Sabbath was with Ozzy. Like, it's like, okay, like I said, 8 albums I was got to catch up on now, like starting out from like the 70s or, early late 60s. But yeah, so just so much variety in the songs that Ozzy had with Sabbath, and just, so influential, but pretty awesome.
It's funny you say that, because when you look at social media now, the big thing in TikTok inspired this is the reel in every form, whether Facebook's doing it, Instagram's doing it. And I forget where my algorithm came through. Reels are almost like what Vine used to be, just quick clip of something and get me to the point. It's like a video, but you want to just see that little blurb instead of big thing, whatever.
Okay.
And there's a reel of Ozzy talking about I don't know how it ended up in my feed. He was talking about Tony Iommi, and
Okay.
and he's talking about why he loved playing with him. And he said because and as he called it out, he goes, modern artists just are in such a rush to get through their song that they're almost tripping over themselves because they want to get to the solo. They want to get to these guitarists, or they feel like it needs to be between verse 2 and 3, or modern guitarists don't. And he said what he loved about Tony. And so it's funny, Jeff brings up this band. He's even saying like, Tony understood the appreciation of pauses in where he interjected. Ozzy talked about how like he could play War Pigs or any of those songs solo, and said that it was different when Tony played it because there was just an understanding between the gap in sound and the artistry behind that. It didn't just have to be boom right in, boom, get your point through, do your thing that sounds creative, looks good, and boom, done. So it's funny because I literally just watched that video for the time that it was from that interview he did. It's probably the first interview I've heard of his that I actually understood English in. But just literally saw that in the last day or two. So it's funny you bring that up because it's
the perfect song that demonstrates that is the band Black Sabbath. On the album Black Sabbath had a song called Black Sabbath. It's the very first one. That depicts exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I guarantee this weekend I will hear War Pigs because I listen to 97 Rock's Rock and Roll 500, because I know I'm at least going to get 500 songs of variety in a 4-day weekend for the only freaking time I'll ever listen to that station, and not same 3 songs within an hour. So
Yeah.
And honestly, if you had to list,
I'm excited to hear War Pigs again just for this too now.
Yeah, off the top of your head, if you're like, okay, I'm going to list you like 20 of the most recognized or my favorite guitar licks, maybe 3 of them are actual solos, right?
Right.
Yep. Sabbath was on my list as well. They were on the outs. I didn't have an appreciation. And it's age. I had to go backwards, right? 70s, man. This is something I've started to appreciate a little bit more than I did even further, even 10 years ago. Budgie and all these other 60s and late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, good, great. I'm kind of surprised by that pick a little bit, but I get it now. Yeah. All right, so my number 4.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's a function of the age, right? Like how,
Well, yeah. All right, so I just thought he was a screaming anger management challenged liberal with a strangely high IQ, maybe. I don't know. I just didn't hear what I was supposed to hear. It didn't matter how much MTV kept playing Liar. Just kept playing Liar all the time. I mean, this man's neck has more muscle in it than my entire body. It's kind of disturbing to watch. Henry Rollins and the Henry Rollins Band is my number 4. So, in fact, I don't even have a single Black Flag record. And I'm pretty sure I couldn't even identify a song. A friend of mine that I was in a car with multiple times because of business associations had one of his solo shows on. Now, I was expecting some sort of musical thing. It was not. It was basically a stand-up routine.
like spoken word.
Spoken word, he calls it. And he could be funny in his delivery sometimes, but a lot of it was just storytelling of what his experiences were. In Russia, where he's going to have a vegan meal, and he says, "No, I'll take the meat." And when the vegetarian plate showed up, it looked like awful, and he's like, "Ha ha ha!" And then the meat showed up, and he was ha 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 too. So couldn't identify what it was. Maybe half caribou, half something else. But so he says there's going to be this show at the show place, and I didn't really want to go, but he kept telling me, man, he goes, "You're missing it. There's blues in there." And I didn't hear it. All I kept hearing was him screaming. So I go to this show anyway. Hell, ticket prices, man, people. I mean, what do we go? $18, $17, $15? Hell, you get out of there, you buy a T-shirt for $10 too. Well,
You need about 4 T-shirts back then for one now.
yeah. I couldn't believe it. I was enthralled because in that setting, it's almost like a destroyed amphitheater, or not amphitheater, but a theater that has no seats in it, and it's kind of a very tight, raw experience. And the blues was there in that play. I could hear it. His vocal was clean. His screaming was still there. The delivery is what it is. But it was so damn tight. The band was super tight, and they were digging it. The crowd was involved. I mean, I just couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it. And then after that, it was, well, I gotta have that album. 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 And there's been inclinations of this band from the beginning that started maybe with better musicians at the start who had more jazz affiliations. And all the records are very, very good. I wish he would still do that kind of thing, but I'm sure if he continued to do that, he probably would, have a coronary. So, instead he does light talking. I think he has his own talk show now, maybe, but I still don't have any Black Flag, but maybe that's a rabbit hole I have to go down. But I consider that a great mistake on my part at the beginning of Judgment. So, back to Alex.
When I first grew up and I learned what a band was, everyone knows the vocalist. When you learn about the makeup of a band, you see the guy in the front of the stage putting words to sound. Everyone can pick up the guitarist next, probably. You see the guy playing that thing with the strings and moving his hands really fast, and holy shit, how's he making that sound like that? Then your next progression usually is maybe the drummer. You can flip-flop the drummer and the guitarist. Because you start feeling when you're at a live concert, you can feel that in your chest the entire time. And you hear that beat, you start, it's the thing you tap your feet along to, and you're almost probably dead on with the song, no matter how musically uninclined you are, like people on this show, raising their hand as we speak, who can't read a music note. And then there's the fourth part. There's the Ringo Starr of everything. You got the bassist. Well, no, Ringo's the drummer, but
Ringo's the drummer.
But people forget the bassist equally. And it's harder to pick up. It takes a tuned ear. When you have a tight 4-piece band, you might have to listen for it a little more. But it lies underneath everything. No one really knows the bassist. It's like it's the last person you learn of the band, and that if you can name the bassist, you probably know the band pretty well from listening to them or have gone and seen them a lot. So I never had an appreciation for bass players until my dad introduced me to Jaco Pastorius and Victor Wooten. And that was a big moment for me to finally understand the artistry behind the solo instrument itself. Currently have Victor Wooten's book sitting over there on my table that is in my to-read list, called The Music Lesson, and got a chance to see him do a solo. I never got to see him perform live. He did a solo, I don't know what you want to call it, a seminar, a session in a classroom at Buffalo State when he came to do a concert here. And my dad took me to that. And I got to watch him speak about the instrument, do a little bit with it, answer questions from people. And it was one of the cool moments I've had in music. So Victor and Jaco gave me an appreciation for the instrument that I never had before. And so I got to give it to those two in this one.
Well, Jaco Pastori has a plethora of bands and people that he's merged with. So you have an entirely wide range of rabbit holes you can drop down into from prog to jazz fusion. So
yep,
yeah, he's a master. no question.
Victor's one that sometimes I'm in the mood and some Victor Wooten just hits different.
Yeah, he's from the
love.
Wu-Tang Clan, right?
Is he? Seriously, I couldn't tell you. I listen to his solo stuff all the time. I listen to that.
No, they're just making a joke on the Wu-Tang.
No, I'll listen to that stuff and he's on another planet, man.
Yeah, I kind of thought you were going to Primus for a minute. I wasn't sure. Jeff Young.
I'm going with more of a punk rock type band, but I didn't really notice them until they had more of a rock feel. I'm going with Suicidal Tendencies. So I didn't even really, I mean, I knew of them. Of course, a name like that travels. And, you know, you always see the kids, especially growing up in a more of a, there's your skater groups and people who like skateboarding, and me and my friends would build ramps. We'd buy the magazines. Suicidal Tendencies was always mentioned in those because they were part of the whole skate culture too. And so like the first 4 albums I never even listened to ever. I mean, I know Join the Army is kind of a popular one, but when Lights Camera Action came out, I think that was like 90, 91, 92, something like that. I just liked almost everything on that album. And it was, you know, I didn't really hear it till my brother brought it home. So he played it and I liked it immediately. And, you know, it didn't cause me to go back and listen to any more older stuff. I just, from that point on, just really liked them. And, you know, I'm familiar with some of the older stuff now, but yeah, just Suicidal Tendencies, man. Just, you know, it's like one of those bands where like 2 years earlier, like you see the kids with the suicidal shirts and like, it's kind of cool art, but it probably sucks, you know, but you didn't really know because you never listened to it, you know, but yeah, definitely really awesome.
Speaking of bassists, right? Isn't he's the bassist for Metallica? So
Yeah.
a hell of a bassist. All right. When I first heard them, all I heard was the swearing. And I figured that it was why it was gaining attention. And I'm pretty sure with the individuals in the locker room at hockey, that's really what they were hearing. I don't think they were understanding, and I certainly wasn't at the beginning either. And that, of course, I didn't appreciate till much later. But the locker room got, you know, pretty bent and excited about the threat, the heaviness of it, and how it's delivered. And I finally got past the swearing to understand the intelligence of it all. And that band is Rage Against the Machine.
Wouldn't have pegged that as a hockey locker room band. Then again, that wasn't my era.
I was debating on whether it should continue because obviously there was one particular song that they would continually play. And you know, in the right venue, yeah. But whatever, right? I appreciate some of that driving force, but I thought it was for effect. It's not. It's for affect. Not, you know, these. It's a genuine speech. It's genuine call out. It's genuinely, you know, it's the most force-filled recording I can remember in my lifetime to ever be put to audio. And everything means something. Whether I agree with their political affiliations or their philosophies, which so much I do, you know, the only thing that changes things is war, generally speaking. An idea doesn't get, you know, change people, generally speaking. You usually have to go to war. Some kind of war. But yeah, so Rage Against the Machine was my next on the list.
So it's funny you mentioned that because I could make almost a spin-off of this. I contemplated picking a category similar to the bass style, based upon my learning, which came from the Guitar Hero video game. There was in the second edition 2 guitarists that you could unlock and play as characters. The reason I almost put in this list was Slash. I never knew who he was till the video game. I knew Guns N' Roses. I knew Axl Rose, maybe because of the name fitting, but Never knew Slash, and now I figured it out from that, and obviously that led me down that rabbit hole at the time. Velvet Revolver, blah blah blah. And then Tom Morello being the other one that was in the game, and his famed guitar, the light blue with the Feed the Homeless thing, or Arm the Homeless, or whatever it said on. Yeah, that being in the game. That was it's funny you say it, because yeah, it's the same thing. Like that made me figure out who the big players were in guitar, and those political messages, like you said, staying very consistent to the character, because even that they'd let that be put in a game, is someone you should understand and know in the genre.
And then Nine Inch Nails was in the same boat for me. I was deciding between the two, because Nine Inch Nails, the first song I heard, Animal, is it Animal? Is
Yeah,
that the time? I mean, it was in the club every night we took the girls to the clubs. And I just got sick. It's the worst song they've ever written, to be honest with you. It's boring as hell. And then further on down the line, Ghost comes out,
Closer.
right? Closer, that's it. Yeah. See, I didn't think it was Animal.
I thought it was.
Yeah, they've done marvelous stuff. That is on the lower end of, yeah. Anyway, Alex, your next pick.
Whether I
the least on that entire album.
What, pardon?
That's the song I would listen to least of the entire album.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yep.
3 bands fit in this one, and it's partially because either they got older or I did. And
Both did.
one band I'm glad that I started to appreciate as they kept going and they got better, in my opinion, was Kings of Leon.
Well, we're gonna find out next weekend.
One band that I got, and I haven't even listened to any singles off that to even get a tease, for once.
We're reviewing it next Saturday.
And then one band that got better as I got older and I understood it and I appreciated it and I liked it even in the early part, but I loved it as I got older and truly started to understand more, was Matthew Good Band. And one that I thought time and myself did justice, for my listening pleasure, was Weezer. That they were always just there for me. And I've realized as I've gotten older, I like them even more and more and more. And I think because even they've put out new stuff, they're consistent to their sound, and I still end up liking it. So these three
are not always consistent to their sound.
I think they are. At least I don't know if it's just Rivers' voice that always makes me realize, yeah, it's Weezer. And that could really probably play a large majority of that thought process.
The Dark album did not rest well with people.
But I'm fine with them switching their style. I think literally it's just the identification part that I'm saying is consistent. Yeah. Is that I can tell when it's Weezer. Even
so when's that until? What was it, until you got older or until they got older?
Both. For me, I just knew Weezer had a couple songs here and there as I would grow up, and then all of a sudden I'm making album dives and then I'm listening to their new stuff as it's coming out while I'm revisiting the old, and I'm getting older in the process. So it was a little bit of a Kings of Leon as the band got older, Matthew Good as I got older, Weezer as both happened, were a progression as well. So
I can understand that.
So that theme for me is time. Whether it's myself or the band, time has made me learn to like those three groups a little bit more each and every time.
Mr. Young, you're number 2.
I'm gonna go with Metric. So didn't really listen to them until really didn't get an album from them until Fantasies came out in 2009. I didn't listen to the first few albums, but it was still listening to the radio for the most part. It wasn't all internet. There was still radio, and there was still radio programs, and there was countdown shows and opinion shows, and just Derringer from 102.1 doing his thing on Sunday nights, and the music, rock history, the ongoing history of new music, and I know it was one of those shows. I don't know which one it was. Probably a combination. where you'd have a couple on the ones that fans called in and voted for, and then you'd hear a little bit more about it. And just, I don't have any of those types of shows in my life really anymore. But that's probably I'm certain that's where I've heard Metric first, and that Fantasy album is just a good album the whole way through. So it was easy to want to go get. And then so obviously typical thing, you like one album, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go back and see what the other ones were like, and maybe they're not as good or as favorite as one, but you don't realize, oh yeah, okay, I do know some of these songs, I do know these because I've heard them before. I didn't realize it was Metric. I didn't realize I like the band as much as I do. So yeah, just kind of like just a function of listening to radio and radio programs that kind of, which I guess the idea anyway, right, to expand
Right.
music.
So Derringer, just to clarify, because Jeff went fast there, Derringer was 107. Andy Frost was the ongoing history of new music, right?
Oh, the voice of God.
Right?
It was.
I know Andy Frost was 102.1, and that was the ongoing history of new music, right? That I know. Derringer, I remember him on 107, I thought.
Yeah, it was 107. It was with Derringer. But
Was it Rock Report?
The ongoing history of music was somebody else, and I'll think of the name in a second, I guess.
Wasn't there Alan Frost too?
Alan Cross.
Frost. Oh my God. Yeah, Andy Frost. Yeah, duh. Sorry.
Oh,
Wow,
no,
yeah.
I even mixed up the last names.
I do that all the time with him. And there's an actor I do that with
He
too.
was a good Twitter follow, and I don't know if he still is as much, but he was a good Twitter follow, Alan Cross, for a while, for just throwing random music facts out there on his Twitter every now and then.
What was great is they used to have, because when the internet started getting more internet-y, they didn't really have like things on demand where you could listen to it. But what they did was all of his ongoing history of musics, you could read or download the entire transcript. So like nowadays you would just click on it and listen to it again. But this was the transcript, and it would just have everything. And usually during the program they would play music in between to highlight what he's talking about.
Was it Andy Frost, by the way, that, because one of the things my dad used to listen to a shit ton was on Q107, Psychedelic Sundays.
Yeah, they had that.
And was that Frost too?
I don't know who did that.
So Andy Frost was was he 107?
I mean, I know for us hockey gods, we all know him as the PA voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs for I don't know why he couldn't have just made the
post game. He did the post game show. He did overnight on Q107, right?
Yeah.
Psychedelic Sunday was his. And by the way, how was Sunday spelled? PSUNDY. So let's get back on pace. Johnny Cash is my number 2. I am not a country lover. I'm stubborn with how Mr. Cash was labeled. I don't like twang that much in my music because it just seems so artificial. The appreciation for past music was something that I was not gravitating to at a young age anyway, and he was already at where he was at. I mean, music beyond which was played on radio, it's like the Beatles, Joni Mitchell, and stuff that was coming up. He was not going to get airplay at that point. This is the 80s, baby, right? I truly missed a boat, but I'm thankful for this moment, and that moment is Walk the Line. The movie, that experience, putting the songs a little more front and center with the life story of 2 wonderfully acted pieces. Truly started my enrollment in his artistry, getting a deeper appreciation for his attachment to the blues, and realizing where, again, this is the blues coming up front, folk country, and eventually alt country, and his appreciation probably for future type music that he brought to his own. So, everybody misses a boat here and there. So my number 2 is Johnny Cash. Not until Walk the Line. And I'm not talking about live doing Walk the Line, Ed Kowalczyk and the boys. Back to you, Alex.
So for my final one, I think it's fitting for today. And if you haven't heard the news, I will get into that after it. But the band itself,
Please tell me we're not going into what I talked about before we got on this program.
maybe you are because I wasn't
Oh,
on.
boy. All right.
But the band itself was just always there. Whatever, I've heard them throughout the late 90s, early 2000s as I was growing up. And it wasn't until I heard Pat Monahan's solo that I then went back to Train and listened and appreciated a lot more. So
So
took
now
someone.
this is going to be the most watched show because again, I'm doing it that day.
So here we go with
I
that.
hate
But no, I just heard the story this morning on Shred and Reagan on 97 Rock about the bassist and the fluky death that was. Because believe me,
Yeah.
if someone asked me to house sit in Brussels, Belgium, I'm freaking going. So Mark, in case you want to move and have me house sit, just let me know.
Yeah.
And Jeff, I mean, you're already in Florida, but I have no desire to go to Florida. And be near the villages. As it gets to it, yeah, I heard Pat Monahan do some solo stuff after I had already heard Train, and then obviously I just kind of went back to it and went, man, it's just it works. I like it more now. I don't really know why. I don't know if
That
it's
first
because
album is a wonderful indie record put together and sold as a rock record, somehow packaged incorrectly. I don't know how. They opened for the Tragically Hip when they came to Buffalo on that record.
no shit.
Mm-hmm.
See, like, and that's a pairing and a duo of bands that I wouldn't have put together on a set list that I wouldn't have formulated that as an option. So yeah, it took me hearing Pat solo for me to appreciate the group itself and what they had already put together as a team. So yeah, that one throws in there that it took solo for me to appreciate the group.
Cool. Mr. Young, your final one. This ought
I'm
to be
going with The Cult. So didn't really pay a lot of, I mean, I knew some of their big songs like, from the Love album or Electric, and but I didn't really want to buy an album from them until Sonic Temple came out. And of course, several songs that were getting radio play, and of course I was listening to the radio because that's all we had. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this album. And then again, you buy that album, you're like, okay, I'm not going to buy the other ones. And then I realized, okay, even before The Cult, there was like the Death Cult, and then before that, it was Southern Death Cult for Ian Astbury's band with different members. But I mean, those two albums in themselves, I never listened to, but because even if you do just for nostalgia purposes, you're like, it's just not as good as The Cult. I'm just going to go back and listen to The Cult. And since then, they've had a lot of good music, a lot of good success, and I've seen them a few times. And yeah, just I don't know, just one of those things where you got to hear it a few times before you really get into it. And it was anything earth shattering that nothing that led me to it. Is just having heard a couple songs that you liked, and you're like, oh, okay, go to music store this weekend, pick it up.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to take a page out of Mark's book on this one. That almost made my list. That I had I probably had 8 or 9 bands that I had in the category of I didn't love them till I saw them live. And it took seeing the Cult here in Lockport at the old summer series. Happened to see the Cult one time, and I went, shit. I knew a couple songs from radio, but
so at that show in Lockport, that my other friend Kevin lives in Tonawanda, he won the signed guitar. And he's a huge Cult fan.
See, it took me going.
That would be amazing. God.
It took me going to that for me to be like, yeah, this is.
And as good as they were
damn good.
Prime at that time.
Right, but that's also again in my shoes and the age discrepancy of when you get to see them. That was the best. It still is probably the best chance I will have ever had to see them. And took the
opportunity.
opportunity
When we went and saw him.
Well, I took the opportunity. I jumped on that. I got a chance to see these guys, and yeah, I mean, it was really good, and it didn't even come close to making what I wanted to put on the show. But it's funny you mentioned it because it was on the written iPhone notes list for me. So
All right. So my number one.
Oh, and by the way,
So
just to
yep.
interrupt. So, Alex, I think Mark was with me. We were supposed to go. We were literally outside of the Armory going to see them, and we realized, oh, the show's canceled. Why? Oh, they broke up. Only
Yeah.
for them to get back together years later.
Yeah.
Come out with Beyond Good and Evil, which is like, where has this been for the last 5, 6, 7 years? Like, that was probably one of the better albums.
you went
Yeah,
to
it
a
was-
canceled show.
Yeah.
Oh, that happened to
They
me several
broke up. They
times.
got in a fight on stage the night before, 2 nights before.
With no
Literally.
internet. I went to the Niagara Falls. Well, what's now is a casino. It used to be the Niagara Falls Convention Center. I would literally arrive there. My parents were going to drop me off with my buddies to go see Iron Maiden for the Seventh Son tour. And there's a piece of paper stuck on the door. Show's canceled, rescheduled, get your money back. I'm like, because there's no internet. Like, and I didn't, I'm not like listening to the radio all the time. I just bought a ticket that says it says go there at that time. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
There was not a song by this man that I wouldn't turn off. Like Cash, I had no interest in folk or his acoustic dribble. I wasn't from the Vietnam era, and nor do I really identify with protest songs. The 80s weren't going to drive me there either, considering all the musical filtering into TV shows like Miami Vice at the time. And that's where my affiliation with Bob Dylan changed. A Michael Mann movie called Band of the Hand. He did not direct it. Somebody else did. The title track, Band of the Hand, written by Bob Dylan, was this gospel ripping blues, I don't know, just crazy guitar. And you know where that guitar's coming from? Wait. Oh, that's the Heartbreakers. That's Tom Petty. That's Campbell. And not only that, honorary Heartbreaker, Stevie Nicks is singing background vocals. This is all in rock blues, but in an 80s like Michael Mann type of movie. All right. I don't know if you've ever seen Band of the Hand. It is literally a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. Nobody likes it, apparently. It's an era piece. It doesn't flow well today, but that song carried that feeling, that emotion, that album. I love that record, and that was the moment I was like, maybe I'm misguided here. Maybe this guy can do a whole shitload of other things, and he could do a whole shitload of other things. And that was where I went down that rabbit hole. Like, and this particular song. So now let's remember now who's in the room. Tom Petty, Bob Dylan. What happens next? The Traveling Wilburys. So Michael Mann is sort of responsible for putting Bob Dylan and Tom Petty together, so we get the Traveling Wilburys. And then obviously I get every Bob Dylan record. It's way over there, and there's a lot, including Live at Budokan and all this other bootlegs and stuff. But his new stuff, old stuff, he's done soundtrack work again and again. One of the ones that you really got to check out is Wonder Boys song. Things I used to know what I thought I did, but things have changed. Oh my God, this guy embodies change, embodies the spirit of songwriting. He might be the greatest songwriter of all time. Desolation Row. That's all if you don't know Desolation Row, you listen to Desolation Row. That tells you everything you need to know about the songwriter. He's got another one on the newest record. That's a 12-minute epic about that. He starts off with the killing of Kennedy, and it goes from there. Just magical. Wouldn't have happened had I not heard Band of the Hand. If I started to try to like it, because protest songs in Vietnam, I would never have gotten it. And I don't even think a Bob Dylan track is on Good Morning Vietnam. So, you know, that kind of tells you how I skipped over that. So. All right. Well, I'm going to thank the panelists for doing this tonight. Tell us about your bands, artists that you didn't really like until, you know, and I'd love to see those stories typed in there because I want to be able to, you know, follow along in what you're saying. So please put that there. Don't forget to check out the album review Saturday tomorrow, because I have a feeling there might be one in there that might be one of those things that I didn't like this until. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And when you're liking, don't go beyond the like. Tell us. We're on the web at beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course. Go Beyond Your Radio with us, a real music appreciation channel, and I will try to get to more videos. Thanks for joining. Happy listening.